Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. Now, I come across this guy called Matt Walsh, who I can't find out anything about, except what he says on his YouTube channel, because he happens to have the name of another person also called Matt Walsh, the far more talented actor Matt Walsh, who's from the brilliant show Veep, and other places, I'm sure. But anyway, he seems to have some really quite abhorrent views, and I thought, why not let's jump into one where he's got a problem with a children's book about, gay stuff. So let's see what this chud has to say about this book, shall we?
Okay, today we look at another attempt to brainwash and indoctrinate our kids through children's literature. This one, and we've done several of these videos because unfortunately there are so many of these kinds of books on the bookshelf if you go to Barnes & Noble or any other bookstore. This one is called The Gay BCs.
Now, I haven't looked at the interior of this Gay BCs book, but I'd hazard a guess to say that pretty much all it's doing is revealing the information to children that gay people exist. Something they probably already know if they've been born after 1995. But it's weird. It's kind of a weird perspective that just revealing that something exists to a child is considered indoctrination. It's this common thing that the right like to do, which is sort of essentially they've got this problem where when people become more educated, they become more left-wing for obvious reasons. Because if you can think well, you're probably not going to be a right-winger. But they've got to come up with an explanation for this that isn't just that right-wing ideas are really dumb and you have to be dumb to believe them, even though that is the truth. So they try and reframe this as education being indoctrination. And it's just sort of anti-intellectualism. They'd rather keep people dumb. They'd rather keep people ill-informed because dumb, ill-informed people are much more likely to be on their side when it comes to their ridiculous and idiotic agenda.
And I'll just read, this is the description of the book. It says, a playdate extravaganza transforms into a celebration of friendship, love, and identity. As four friends sashay out of all the closets, dress up in a wardrobe fit for kings and queens, and discover the wonder of imagination.
Yep, sounds totally fine to me. I mean, just a cute kid's book, you know? And this is sort of like a kind of case of boomer rage against the modern world, you know? It's like, oh, all you kids with your long hair and your rock and roll music. You know, this is just basically a person who's super out of touch with modern culture, bitching and moaning like a whiny crybaby because they wish it was like it was when they were young. But in this guy's case, who doesn't look that old, I'd imagine he kind of wishes it was how it was when, I don't know, when his parents were young. I mean, it really is a kind of sad thing. It's like, if he was older, there'd be a bit more of an excuse for it, because he'd be kind of like, oh, well, he's kind of, you know, stuck in his ways. I mean, he's a total homophobic arsehole, but, you know, maybe he just doesn't know any better because he's old and his brain has gone to piddle. But this is a younger guy, maybe in his 30s, I'd guess, who is weirdly stuck in the culture of like 50 years ago or more. It's bloody weird.
Bisexual. D is for drag. You can strut and dance in clothes that you love, dresses, heels, or pants. Now remember, drag is burlesque for gay men.
Incorrect. Drag just means men who like dressing in women's clothing, but who aren't trans, basically. Just somebody who dresses up in clothing of the other gender expression. It's like, it's not a show necessarily. I mean, there are drag shows that may include drag. I mean, pantomime is a British tradition, which is terrible, but it's sort of like a play for kids in which usually characters like widow twanky, sort of older female characters are portrayed by men in dresses for comedic effect. It's literally child friendly. It's fine. Like, it's almost as if they think there's something like almost sort of magical about particular items of clothing. It's just cloth cut into a particular style. It's like, if you put that on, like, instantly you're somehow perverse or something. It's just really weird. The sort of odd, almost like sympathetic magic or sort of occult magical wishful thinking that they are applying to these things, as if like there's some inherent power in these expressions of gender which can sort of do something to people's minds in some weird way. Like, it's almost kind of new agey, you know, the sort of people who mess with like crystals and stuff, which I've got no problem with. I mean, I like a nice crystal as much as the next person, but it's weird that these people who are kind of presenting themselves as like, we are the rational ones, we are the logical, scientific, blah blah blah, even though they are obviously completely ascientific, but they have the aesthetic of that, the performative aesthetic of reason. They're the ones who are sort of assigning these mystical powers to inanimate objects. Bizarre.
That's what it is. I mean, that's the history of drag. It's adult-oriented. It's highly sexual by its nature.
I mean, sure, whatever floats your boat, man. But if you find it highly sexual, that's on you. That's really your business. I've got no problem with that. But I'd really rather you kept your own sort of sexual interests, especially those which you're sort of not very comfortable with, out of the political discourse, because your own inability to come to terms with your own interests, let's say, is really none of ours or the people who might read this book or the publisher of this book or the writer of this book business. You know, just keep it to yourself.
And now we're really getting into it here with I. I is for intersex. Some are born with the parts of both a boy and a girl. Bodies are works of art. Okay, yeah, some are born intersex, and by some we mean about 7 people in the whole world.
No, actually, there's 130,458,000 intersex people, which is a small percentage of the world population, it's true. That's still a hell of a lot of people. And so what? So what if there's few of them? So what if there even was 7 people? Only 7 people? Who cares? I mean, there's only like 6 tigers or whatever in the world. We still teach children about them. Like, who cares? Totally irrelevant.
But for some reason, they get lumped into this conversation. Let me ask you, why are intersex people, so-called, why are they lumped in with gay, trans? What do they have to do with anything?
Why do they? Why do they get lumped in with LGBTQ plus blah blah blah? Well, I think we're about to find out, as this Matt Walsh is about to indirectly pretty much exactly tell us why they're lumped in with that group. Let's have a listen and see, judging from his words, if we might guess as to why that might be.
Intersex, that's a medical condition. That's a deformity. That's what that is.
Ding, 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 ding. And there it is. Of course, the reason why is because they are marginalized people for their gender expression or sexual orientation. That's specifically why. It's because people like him are calling it a deformity, is why they might feel like they want to be represented in some way. And LGBTQ and so on are a group of people who've collected together to help each other not be so marginalized. That's kind of the whole point. That's why it's even a collective thing in the first place. Because if they weren't marginalized at all or treated badly, they'd just be people, which of course in reality they are just people. Everyone's different. This is what I find so funny about these sorts of channels. And hopefully you guys do too. That they often consist of just people who are very out of touch, being confused about things, not knowing why things are happening, and instead of their reaction to that being, well, why don't I do a bit of research and find out, their reaction is just to get angry about it, just to get angry that they don't understand what's happening. It's like the anger of the idiot. I just don't really understand how someone could be sort of so fundamentally uncurious that instead of wanting to find out more when they find something a bit strange, they just get angry with it. That really is the kind of core of the conservative mindset. Anger at their own confusion, redirected out towards the world. You know, the world is a big place, dude. Like, there's going to be a lot of things in it that are going to make you a bit confused at first. You know, and if you can't cope with that, if you don't have a way of sort of handling that confusion other than anger, you're going to be sort of angry quite a lot of the time, and that's sort of going to make you really miserable. You know, why not consider adopting curiosity as an alternative? But, you know, the thing is, they're sort of fundamentally against learning. It's sort of like that anti-intellectualism thing I was talking about before, where they view learning as indoctrination, because people who learn more tend to be more left. So even in sort of their own minds, they're sort of actively trying to avoid learning about anything. Because why be curious about the world and actually learn something when you can just be sort of angry, bitter, and frustrated?
So why are we lumping people who suffer from a deformity in with, what do they have to do with anything? Intersex people are always brought in, especially when the topic is trans. And the left, they're trying to justify their position on gender. They say, well, what about intersex people? What about them?
Jesus Christ, this is this is just another case of bloody context blindness. The only reason we're bringing them up is in response to you saying people are born male or female, and we say, well, obviously they're not because there's an exception to that. That's what about them. That it disproves your whole argument. That's what. That's what. Jesus H. Christ. What an idiot. What an absolute idiot. So what can we learn from this video? Well, we can learn that basically right-wingers are confused and angry with the world because they don't understand it. They've been left behind while the rest of us have moved on. That they think they're sort of fundamentally against learning and think that development of any kind, mentally or sort of even with infrastructure or anything, is a negative thing. And they'd rather sort of be regressed into kind of drooling idiots who walk on all fours, I imagine. Still point at aeroplanes and think digital watches are the height of technology. What an idiot. What an idiot. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, whatever. The sort of YouTube stuff for the algorithm stuff. Or leave a hateful comment, because I always enjoy those. Look after yourselves and each other. Goodbye.